Good evening and welcome to Aging with Attitude. My name is Alan Levin, and our guests this evening are Betsy Baskwell and Linda Hurlbert. They are board members of the Parkinson Association of the Carolinas. Welcome, ladies, to Aging with Attitude.
Thank you very much.
Let me start out by asking, what is the mission of the Parkinson Association of the Carolinas? Whoever wants to talk.
Well, our mission would be to provide support and resources to people with Parkinson's, their families, and their care partners, both in North Carolina and South Carolina, and through education and collaboration.
Oh, I see. Okay, it sounds like a very worthwhile thing. You know, I probably have the general idea of what Parkinson's disease is. I associate it with involuntary tremors, but maybe for our viewers, what is Parkinson's disease exactly? Linda?
Parkinson's is a degenerative neurological condition. It's progressive, it's chronic. Basically, it's a process in the brain where neurons are destroyed. These neurons make dopamine. Most people think of dopamine as the feel-good chemical, but dopamine also controls muscle movement and coordination, which is why one of the side effects that you mentioned, or one of the symptoms of Parkinson's, is the tremors. Also can result in rigidity, muscle rigidity, loss of balance, and just basic slowness in being able to move. So.
Okay. It reminds one thing you said, destruction of brain cells. Yeah.
Yes.
Is that? Yeah. It kind of reminds me of Alzheimer's disease a little bit, where that also occurs in Alzheimer's. But in Parkinson's, I guess it's the part of the brain that's affected. You don't have the memory loss, or maybe you do have the memory loss.
Right, you can. It is very similar to Alzheimer's, and the neurons are destroyed, and there's a protein that's left behind. It's different in Alzheimer's. But there can be with Parkinson's, it's a different chemical that's acted upon, the dopamine, than with Alzheimer's. But you can have cognitive impairment, especially later on in later stages of Parkinson's.
I see, okay. You mentioned progressive. How do you know when it's first starting? What's your first warning?
Well, you would have to think about the symptoms that you're having. If you're walking differently, if you feel like your gait might be off a little bit, that might be one of the first symptoms that that you would have. Your balance is off, maybe lack of coordination, a tremor. You can have just a slight tremor in your hands or your arms or even your legs or your face.
Right. And interestingly, sometimes these symptoms will strike on one side first, and so people think they tend to ignore it because it's only on one side and think that it will go away, and eventually it'll affect the other side.
I see. I guess it depends on which half of the brain is first affected. As I understand it, the right half of the brain affects the left side and vice versa.
Right, that's one theory for sure.
Right, okay. I gotcha. I have the impression that the disease affects pretty much older people. What older is maybe 60, 65 plus. Is this correct, or can it affect younger people as well?
It can affect younger people. The average age is 60, but it can affect you in your 40s and 50s, and I know a few people that were diagnosed in their 20s.
Yeah.
So that would be considered young onset. If you're younger than 40 and diagnosed, it's considered young onset Parkinson.
That would be pretty tough under the age of 40 to have to start to contend with this thing. Roughly speaking, about, if you have the number, about what percent of people 60 plus have Parkinson's?
In the United States?
Any base you want to use.
I'm not sure percentage-wise. There are about 1 million folks total in the United States that have Parkinson's. They say that worldwide it's in excess of 6 million.
Yeah.
So I can tell you it's second only to Alzheimer's, which you just mentioned. Alzheimer's is number one. Parkinson's is a close second. And there are more folks with Parkinson's than ALS, MS, and muscular dystrophy all combined. So it's pretty prevalent.
Yeah. Let me push further. For somebody who's got it, let's say they're not just starting on this disease, but they're well advanced in this disease. how functional can they still be? Can somebody who's, let's say, had Parkinson's for a couple of years, can they still hold a job?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Everybody's symptoms are different.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, with everybody's different symptoms, it's hard to tell.
Sure.
I think they need to make sure that they are taking care of themselves
Right.
and doing the things that they need to do,
Right.
exercising, eating
Yeah.
properly,
Right.
avoiding stress as much as possible,
Yeah.
joining a support group, being with people that might have similar things in common.
Sure. Yeah, that all sounds good. These things, they keep your body in generally good shape, but they don't really do anything against the disease itself. Exercise, good eating, and so forth and so on. There isn't anything that you can really do to slow the progress of the disease, can you? That was my understanding anyway.
No, there's no cure, and the medicines treat the symptoms.
Yeah.
The primary medicine basically just increases the dopamine in the brain.
Yeah.
But there's no what scientists call neuroprotective
Right.
medications out there that might
Yeah.
actually halt it.
Right.
But they certainly are helpful in alleviating symptoms so that people, like you said, can continue to work
Right.
and function and live a normal life. So
Yeah.
those things are extremely important.
Yeah. That's good. That's very good. I mean, that does give some measure of comfort. It's not some kind of a death sentence, for people that do get it. There's a lot of choice and a lot of action a lot of different kinds of constructive actions that they can take to prolong their ability to function, to work, to be in a relationship, to do whatever. And that's good. Very good.
Right. And sometimes the things that they do change.
Yeah.
They may eventually give up their employment
Right.
And get involved in other things.
Right.
My father was like that, for example. He had Parkinson's, and there
Yeah.
came a point where he did not work in his business, but he
Right.
volunteered a lot, started his own nonprofit, and was
Right.
able to be very active
Right.
that way.
Yeah, I see. You may not be able to continue your job as a longshoreman, but you can,
Right.
you can be a math tutor or something like
Right.
that.
Absolutely.
Forgive me, I have allergies. In terms of what the Parkinson Association does, you named a couple of things in the general area, providing resource, helping the family. Can you go into a little bit of detail on exactly how and what you do and so forth and so on? Anybody?
Well, we're affiliated with a lot of support groups in North and South Carolina.
Yeah.
We have over 50 now, don't we?
Right, in both states.
And we offer a newsletter, a monthly newsletter
Right.
that explains upcoming fundraisers or any
Yeah.
kind of educational seminars that might be available.
Right.
What else?
What about direct connection to sufferers and or their families, apart from the newsletter? I mean, do you have a number that people can call and vent or complain or ask for help?
Oh, absolutely. Our
Excuse
office
me.
is staffed.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa Van Rossum is in the office, and we have a new executive director.
Uh-huh.
Our number is...
It's on the crawl, don't
is
worry
it
about
okay?
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone can call to get in, just to talk if they need to
Yeah.
get references, referrals.
Right, find out names of doctors and different places they might go exercise.
Right.
But I think one thing that you were saying is, how can you connect with other people with Parkinson's? Because I think that's
True.
so important,
Yeah.
and the support groups are one way to do that. But then we have, annual events, luncheon, and we have other awareness events and educational symposiums, and those are great places to go
Right.
and meet other people. For me, I can remember the very first event I ever went to, and it was so nice to see other people like myself who had family members with Parkinson. Definitely makes you feel like you're not alone,
Oh,
and you
yeah.
learn so much from talking to them. So those types of events, I think, are very important
Oh, yeah.
to get yourself to go to.
Yeah.
Very
That thing that you
helpful.
mentioned about like not being alone, and I'm the only guy that as unlucky to get this. You go out and you meet people, and some of them have problems that are worse than yours. You feel grateful instead of sorry for yourself.
Right, right.
Right.
And it's just nice to be in a room full of people who are all there because they care about people with Parkinson's.
Right.
And that's a good feeling.
Yeah. I'm wondering, it might be hard for you to observe this, but when you bring people together like this, do connections develop outside the group? Do people in the group start maybe calling each other every once in a while and how you doing, and maybe offering support or maybe even asking for help? It might be hard for you to learn this if it happens. Any indication that it does?
Oh, I think so. Oftentimes it's like an instant connection.
Yeah.
Because they have that commonality.
Right.
And they feel like they understand each other, what
Yeah.
they're going through. So I think it's an instant connection in many
Right.
cases.
Is a Parkinson Association involved in research on the disease at all in any way?
No, we are not. We
No.
are not. There are other much larger organizations
Yeah.
that raise large sums of money.
Okay.
Our organization is simply limited to providing the support, providing the resources.
Right.
You know, we're very supportive of what's going on out there. We're excited
Sure.
about what's going on out there. We keep up with the research
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. But our mission is to help people cope with Parkinson's, live the best, fullest lives they can.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. We talked about symptom management before. I gather there are some specific medications that deal with specific problems. Is there, for example, a medication that reduces either the frequency or severity of tremors? Is there such a medication?
There is a surgery, deep brain stimulation surgery.
Oh
that
yeah.
is-
How does that work? Is that an outpatient or procedure or an inpatient?
That's an inpatient,
Yeah.
as far as I know.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to alleviate some of the tremors.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay. Supposed to. I get a little reservation there.
Well, I think it does. I mean,
Yeah.
I know a few people that have had it, and
Yeah.
they seem to be doing much better.
Right. Right. Is the government, is the FDA or other federal agency involved in funding research on Parkinson's? Do you know?
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not familiar
Not familiar with
with
any.
how the research
Yeah.
is being funded at this point. Like I
Yeah.
said, I know that there are other organizations out
Yeah.
there, the national organizations,
Yeah.
as opposed to a regional organization like ours. And I'm sure they're trying to.
Yeah. You mentioned before that you thought that in the United States, out of 300 million people, which would of course include little infants too, I believe, there are 1 million sufferers. So maybe out of adults, we might be talking maybe 0.5% of the total adult population, and maybe more like 2% of the, or 3 or 4% of the senior population. That was, speaking in crass financial terms, that might represent a significant market for drug companies. I am wondering why more of them are, of course I don't know, and neither do you. I'm wondering why you don't hear about more research on their part on developing things for the disease. Or maybe they've gotten only as far as like tweaking the symptoms.
I don't know. I think so much of it is
Yeah.
like with any other disease,
Yeah.
is they really can't quite put their finger on what causes it.
Uh-huh.
They know that there's a genetic factor, at least
Yeah.
somewhere between 15 to 25%
Yeah,
of people that get Parkinson's have a first degree blood relative with it.
yeah.
They also think that there's an environmental component
Oh,
to
really?
it, and they've seen, scientists have seen clusters of people with Parkinson's, especially in heavy agricultural farming areas
Oh,
and that sort
really?
of thing.
Yeah.
But they really haven't gotten to the
Right.
root of the cause. What exactly is it that is causing these neurons in the brain to be destroyed?
Yeah.
And so, it makes finding the cure.
Yeah, difficult
Difficult.
if you don't know what causes it. Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe maybe it might, some of the cases might have something to do with pesticides, who knows?
Right.
If they're near agricultural areas.
Right. But it is definitely increasing, partly because of the population aging. That's
Sure.
another, you say there's a million, it's expensive, that sort of thing, but there are guesstimates, again, by the scientists that in 10 years, our country could end up with twice as many people with Parkinson's
Right.
as the population continues to age at such a
Right.
rapid rate.
And
I guess I'm sorry, go
the
ahead.
symptoms mimic the natural aging process.
Yeah.
So there may be a lot of people out there
Right.
with it that go
Yeah.
undiagnosed.
I know. Yeah, I know. So sometimes I'm lying in bed awake at 2 o'clock and I'm wondering, what was the name of that guy who, and I begin to wonder myself if I'm losing like neurons on my hard drive somewhere. Okay, very, very good. We've covered a lot of good stuff here. One observation that I want to make is that a disease with 1 million sufferers, we are fortunate that it is not more disabling than it is, that people, at least maybe not in very advanced stages, people are able to bear this disease and function and work and live fairly normal lives. We can be grateful for that. It is not a totally disabling disease. That's one thing to be grateful for anyway. At this point, is there some area that you would like to cover that we have not touched on so far? Before we move on to other stuff.
I would just say that, if you were to suspect that you had Parkinson's, go to a neurologist immediately.
Yeah.
Find somebody that specializes or knows something about Parkinson's, and again, our organization can help put you in touch with those doctors. But also, if you know someone, if you have a friend or a family member, educate yourself, because if you understand what they're going through, if you understand, for example, that these medicines that they take, that they wear off after a certain period of time.
Right.
They call it on-off period. So you know that if you are out with this person,
Right.
They're going to crash, and so you need to go out and get them back home again.
Right.
Things like that, or if they're having trouble with their gait, you can help them avoid objects that they might stumble on. But I think the more you know, the more helpful you can be.
Oh, absolutely. That makes such tremendous sense if you know somebody what their vulnerabilities are and what you need to be prepared to do.
Right.
Go to a neurologist. Excuse me. I guess this kind of thing can show up on some kind of a brain scan, maybe damaged neurons, or something shows up when they read the film, some area of the brain where there seems to be some damage. That's really remarkable.
I think initially you're diagnosed because of your symptoms.
Because of the symptoms, the clinical symptoms, as opposed to the nuclear imaging, whatever it is that they do.
And then how you respond to the medication is an
yeah.
indication as well.
Yeah, I see. Very good, very good. I think that I'd like to know a little bit more about how the Parkinson Association of the Carolinas functions. For example, we haven't talked at all about using volunteers. Do you make use of volunteers, and does that help in your work?
We would love to have volunteers.
Oh, yeah,
Absolutely.
All right. What do you need volunteers to do?
Help us with our fundraising events.
Yeah.
Just help us with the awareness, spreading the awareness.
Right.
Even working in the office, I'm sure Lisa
Yeah.
and Marie would like to have some help in the office at times.
Yeah.
When they're overloaded.
All right. I see. Very good.
Well, we do have a very active board, and
Yeah.
I think all of us on the board, volunteers, and we participate in and help with all of the events.
Yeah.
But certainly, if high school students, college students, especially ones who are
Right.
have to get credit for school or that sort of thing, we'd love to have their help. There's,
Right.
I'm sure, always something
Yeah.
that they could do, and especially if they have an interest in Parkinson's, if
Right.
had a family member or something like that, then that would make it extra special for them.
Right.
But we can always use help.
Well, you need people to man the phones when people call up that number asking for help, or you certainly need that too. All right. There's no curative treatment for Parkinson's, but again, a question kind of from left field. From the two of you, from your observations and readings, does it seem likely that anything might be coming down the pike in the next 10 or 15 years? Are there people working on this thing?
I know that Michael J. Fox is working. His foundation is working.
Right. He was a sufferer, I remember, or is a sufferer. Okay, that's good to know. All right.
I have read extensively some of the stem cell research they're doing is helping them.
Right.
But I'm not a scientist, so I don't understand it. So I am very hopeful. Especially when you look at the medications being used today, were really developed in the 60s.
Yeah.
And they're very effective. They have, like I said, a natural wearing off period, but they are effective in giving your brain to create more dopamine. But I keep thinking that in 50 years, it's been 50 years, so surely we can come up with some better medicines. And again, something neuroprotective is the word they use. If they can find something neuroprotective, then at a minimum it would halt the further progression.
Right.
If not stop it altogether. So that would be the dream, the ideal.
Yeah. By the way, this is kind of like really completely irrelevant, but it popped into my mind when you were talking about dopamine. I used to work with prison inmates in a kind of like a drug kind of program where we were trying to help the inmates not go back into drugs when they were released. And I used to do like discussion groups with the inmates, and one of the things I learned about cocaine is that cocaine provides the dopamine or a dopamine-like substance, which is so effective that the brain, shuts down its dopamine factory, which makes you completely dependent on the cocaine until you go through the horror of getting off it. It is interesting that that's how that works and how that creates the physical dependency for the drug. I don't know about any other, I don't know about heroin. I don't think marijuana does anything like that. It was interesting. I don't know, it just popped into my head.
Right. Well, it is interesting because it's related to the whole, depression and anxiety go along with Parkinson's.
Oh, really?
Because, obviously if you're not producing dopamine, then very naturally, and those can tend to be precursors, sort of non-motor signs that you see early on. But I have also read too that there is a fear that all the antidepressants that people are taking, could that affect people's ability to naturally create dopamine? And nobody really knows the answer to that, but it's an interesting question because at least with Parkinson's, we've seen what happens in the brain if you don't get enough dopamine. It doesn't just affect your mood. Right. It's your ability to move and your balance and your coordination. And
does it affect serotonin, which is the brain chemical fingered in depression? Do you know about that?
I don't know.
Yeah. By the way, some guy just, I think it was just 2 weeks ago, I don't know, he's like one lone researcher. He made the statement that antidepressants are just a placebo. And he claims to have done research where half the people got a placebo, sugar pills, and the other half got the antidepressants, and there was no difference in the outcome. But people believe it helps. Who knows if he's right or not? He could be like
interesting. Well, and I've heard that about antidepressants, but just based on my experience with seeing Parkinson's patients on Sinemet, which is the primary drug, it's dramatic effects.
Oh, really?
Very real dramatic effects.
Like what? What do you say?
To where you can, when it starts to wear off, you know it.
Yeah.
My father had very bad tremors, and he would take the Sinemet, and it would calm down, and then you could tell when the Sinemet was starting to wear off.
Yeah. Wow.
So I do think those, the drugs that we have are very effective.
A lot bigger difference than you would expect from a placebo.
I would not expect that. I'm not a scientist, but
Oh, that's great. So there are good medications available. Can't treat it, but you can make the disease a lot more bearable than it is. Okay, good. We've covered what people should do if they first suspect that they have it. See a neurologist and get some professional guidance there. You might find out you don't have it, that you've got something else. It's called aging. And that will be a good thing to do. And if you do have it, keep working with your neurologist and try to make connections with other people, particularly sufferers. And you certainly want to make connection with Parkinson Association of the Carolinas to get more help and assistance. And maybe even come down and volunteer to man the phone sometime or help in something else. Okay, very good. Anything else? We've got just a couple of minutes left in the program. And anything else that you would like to cover that we haven't as yet hit? I think we've pretty much covered the waterfront, haven't we?
I think we have.
We were even able to do something for the cocaine addicts. All right, very good. To summarize, I started to summarize before, but I want to bring in the good points you made earlier in the program, that even though they may not treat the disease or cure the disease, you want to keep your body in as good a shape as possible. So you want to watch your diet, you want to keep exercising, you want to do those things that maybe, and I'm just throwing this in, former mental health counselor, you want to stay in as much of a good mood as you possibly can, be involved in things that you like to do, and that's about as good as you can get. Right? Anything else that you think you should be doing?
Well, I think exercise is most important.
Really? Yeah.
Because exercise produces dopamine.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, really?
It does. And so any type of cardiovascular exercise or aerobic exercise where you're increasing your heart rate and your respiration, your body's going to naturally produce dopamine.
Right. That's why people feel better after they jog. They may be exhausted, but their mood is elevated.
That's right.
That's great. I remember long ago when I used to jog. Well, speaking about jogging, our time is up. And it's been great having the two of you here. I certainly learned a lot, and I believe our viewers also did too. This has been Aging with Attitude. My name is Alan Levin, and our very informative guests this evening have been Betsy Baskwell and Linda Hurlbert. They are board members of the Parkinson Association of the Carolinas. You take care of yourself.